Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Yeah.
The views expressed by J. Michael McCoy are the views of the hosts and guests of Max World Live, and not necessarily the views of Webcast One Live, its staff, its management, the cleaning crew, Dave the electric guy, the guy who cleans the skywalk, the woman who brought in the cookies, the management staff of Hubble Real Estate, the parking lot attendant at Keck Parking, the wait staff over at Miss Kitty's, the coffee crew at Frederick's, the man in the street corner willing to work for food, Rob Spearman, Max Crabb, or anyone else of sound mind. Should you be offended, provoked, intimidated, shocked, confused, or just made to think independently, log on to MaxWorldLive.com right now. It's your voice we want to hear in Max World. And now, live from the palatial studios of Webcast One Live, your host, J. Michael McCoy.
No, that doesn't look like J. Michael McCoy to me. Now, this is Tom Coates coming to you from Max World Live, KTIA, View from a Pew, and a host of other titles and names. But J. Michael McCoy is not in the house. Now, last week when we interviewed Kane Robinson on this show, I had a great interview. If you missed it, you might want to go on and catch it on podcast. Kane went into some of his background and associations with guys like Charlton Heston and what have you. But I accused Mac last week of being AWOL, accused him of goofing off. He called in to take umbrage with me. And this week, though, his mother-in-law passed away last night and has a legitimate excuse this week. So we wish Mac and CJ well, and we'll do the best we can to uphold the standards that Mac's high standards have set for this show. This week, as I previewed last week, our guest is, in fact, when we signed off, I called him Will Robinson. I guess I was thinking about Lost in Space, but it's actually Will Rogers.
Yay!
And there Will is.
Danger, Will Rogers.
And Will is the co-chair of the Polk County Republican Party.
That would be a demotion, actually, but it is chairman.
Oh, I thought you were co-chair for a while.
That's been 2009, 2010. I was co-chair, and then
you've just been the chair for all these years. And here I've been thinking you were answering to somebody. You're the man.
I do. I answer to the 80,000 registered Republicans in Polk County.
Polk County is the biggest county in the state. I assume we have the most registered Republicans in the state.
Yes.
It's kind of, since we are the state capital, I think you kind of set the tone for a lot of other counties in this state. So who you have, what direction you set, gives a lot of other people direction and guidance. What's high on the priority list these days, Will?
You know, Tom, I mean, thank you very much, by the way, for having me back on. I'm glad to be here. And again, my sympathies go out to the McCoy family, and hope for the best for their family over the next few days. So, you know, we've been doing great things. This last year, obviously, we had a great election year. Of course, Governor Branstad won, Joni Ernst won, David Young won. They were able to successfully elect a congressman up in the 1st Congressional District, which was a big surprise. I think by January 1, he'd already had 2 announced Democrat opponents already.
Yeah, they apparently don't think Blum can hold that seat, do they?
He didn't even take his oath of office, and they already were after him. Yes, yes, absolutely. They're going to go after him. It's a Democrat it's a Democrat-leaning district, but it's Jim Nussle used to do very well in that area, even though it was tough. But now that Congressman Braley's gone and we got a Republican in there, you always got to beat the champ. So I think Rod Blum, if he does the right, doesn't goof off and lazy around. He goes out and works hard in the district on the weekends.
I think he's working. I've heard some talk, heard some interviews. I think they may come around to understanding that they've got a thinking, hard-working man in the office over there, and wonder what they were doing with Bruce Bailey all those years.
I think that the people over there are pretty excited about having him be their congressman. A lot of Republicans and even independents, and a few Democrats as well. And I mean, not to say that any other congressman's not doing that. David Young is working extremely hard as well. But it's going to take somebody that's going to be very disciplined, work hard, raise a lot of money, and is going to do a good job of representing their constituents. And I think if he does that, they're going to reward him with another term in office.
Well, and he's a businessman. He comes from good grounding. He's not some shyster lawyer like Bailey. He's a man with some good grounding. I've been impressed when I didn't know much about him, but the more I hear him, the more I'm impressed. I think he's going to maybe hold that seat for a while.
Absolutely. So, here in Polk County, getting back to like the election last year, one of the highlights of our year was having Zach Nunn, who's our state representative now in House District 30, which is, think of Altoona, southeast Polk area, all the way up to the Elkhart area. And Zach is a great young man. He was a Drake graduate, grew up in the area, served in the Air Force, still does serve in the Air Force, and is works in counterintelligence in the military, in the Air Force, and just a fabulous young guy. Great, he's well grounded. He's centered. In terms of, when I say centered, he's not radical in anything. He's going to fit his district quite well. But in 2010, Kim Pearson won that seat from Jerry Huser, and she won by 111 votes.
Okay.
This time around, Zach won, and he beat his Democrat opponent, Joe Riding, who was the incumbent, by 1,590 votes.
Sounds like a more convincing win.
It was a very convincing win. We put, obviously that was a great team effort with a great candidate. The House Majority Fund put a lot of funding into that race. And then on top of it, the Polk County Republicans, we went out there and worked very, very hard. Since the beginning of, around 4th of July, the 5th of July, we started knocking doors in that area, and we door knocked thousands and thousands of doors.
Well, you've done a marvelous job. You bring a lot of energy. I know this is not a position that pays you. It is one you have to pay for. You have to get out and spend a lot of your own money besides the time, and sometimes it's probably a thankless job when you get some knucklehead calling you up late at night complaining about such and such. But we had Brad Zahn on 2 weeks ago in that seat. And Brad, I always respected going way back to when he was the mayor of Urbandale with his forthrightness. And I asked him a question. I want to ask you the same question. Was there not the will to go ahead and take the Iowa Senate this last time? Because it looked to me like in a wave election with the Republicans that if there had been just a little bit more will to do so, that we could have taken the obstacle of Gronstal and the 26 to 24, roadblock we've got for a lot of issues, tax reform and other things that we'd like to see done, out of the way. It didn't look to me like the same kind of effort was being expended to take some key races in the Senate, and I want to get your thoughts on that. Brad kind of agreed with me, but I want to get your thoughts on that.
Well, I'm not going to say that there's, I'm not going to take exception with anything that might have been said by Brad. I didn't actually hear it.
Sure.
But, the synopsis that there was some lack of, maybe commitment, I'm not certain about that. What I will tell you is the following. Mike Gronstal, as a political leader, I'm not talking about in terms of how he does as a job, but as the majority leader in the Iowa Senate, does a tremendous job of maintaining and building his majorities. And what I mean by that is the following. They look for people to recruit to run for office that fit their districts uniquely well compared to maybe some of the candidates we've produced to get on the ballot. And I'll give you one example. We had a really wonderful candidate that stepped forward and ran in Senate District 15. This is, again, that eastern Polk County House District 30 race, and then also the western part of Jasper, including Newton. And this was held by Dennis Black. And Dennis Black, who was a long-serving Iowa senator, decided not to run again. Prior to his announcement, Crystal Bruns, who's just, a very wonderful lady. We were excited to have her as our candidate. She was very dynamic in terms of the fact that she had a great resume, likable person, could go up and talk to people and communicate well with them, and was willing to work really hard. The Democrats, to replace Dennis Black, recruited Chaz Allen. Chaz had been the mayor of Newton for a number of years. Most people probably didn't know even what his political identity or affiliation would have been. Right. In fact, he'd worked a lot with Governor Branstad in the past, and probably a lot of folks thought he was a Republican.
Right.
the Democrats went out and recruited an excellent candidate that fit well with the district. And because of his name recognition and the fact that he'd never done anything that was scandalous as mayor, probably earned him that opportunity to be their senator.
Well, and when he is in session, he seems to be very adept, sometimes outmaneuvering the Republicans. And I think the recent issue of the 10 cent a gallon tax increase on the gasoline in this state may be a good example. He said, in essence, that he would not take it up unless he had a certain number of Republicans that were going to step forward and support it. He wasn't going to be there, making this a Democrat issue. He wanted it bipartisan, and this gave him an opportunity to say to some of his key senators, oh, yes, if you want to vote against it, you have my permission to do that, because that will help solidify your seat. Otherwise, more of the electorate in certain areas would have been upset with him. And I thought it was a masterful move on his part. I think the Republicans probably, let him get by with certain things, and perhaps like we do too often in Washington. Harry Reid seemed like an old, corrupt politician that can barely put one foot in front of the other, and yet he seems to oftentimes outmaneuver us in Washington too, much as Gronstal does here. What do you think?
Well, Mike Gronstal, again, I think one of the things that, again, he's been very successful at is, again, building those majorities and maintaining them. What he does during the session is certainly he does that very effectively as well. But I just want to reiterate the point. There was another candidate, and this was down in Sandy Greiner. She was our state senator from down in the Washington County, Keokuk County area. Mm-hmm. And Sandy had been in the Iowa House, then stepped down, and then she ran for a couple years after that. She ran for the Senate one, and she stepped down from the Senate, and that created a vacancy. Sure. And there was a couple candidates that ran for that. And again, the Democrat that they recruited was really more of a better fit for the district in terms of people's, their background, their ideology. And he had a great story to tell when he went door to door. And people, this guy, I believe, was a law enforcement agent that went after child molesters. I mean, this is, what's to say about this guy that's going to be negative? I don't want to call it masterful, but what it is it shows that he has a better understanding about the types of candidates he needs to identify, and they identify them at the right time. And the time isn't to be waiting now or wait until,
right,
3 weeks from the primary.
Sure.
It's to start talking to those people today. And that's why at the county party, we're already starting to identify the candidates that we might have run in 2016 or even beyond that.
I guess the question that Brad and I talked about 2 weeks ago, and then the answer coming back around, is that perhaps some of the powers that be might find it easier to be able to blame a lack of being able to complete an agenda, tax reform and some other things, if you can turn and you kick the Mike Gronstal can and say, well, we would have done thus and such for you, but, the doggone Democrats in the Senate prevented it, and maybe this is an easy excuse why they don't get some of the things that their constituents want. That was what we were talking about.
Well, it'd be nice to be able to, it's nice to speculate about things like that. The fact is that the leadership in the Iowa Senate and on the Republican side and the Democrat side, every 2 years and 2 years from now we'll have our best shot. I think the number of competitive races that will be up, where Democrats are going to have a harder time holding those seats than.
Okay, so you think in 2 years, if all goes well and Obama stays unpopular, that we may have even a better shot to take over the Senate and then give them no excuses not to re-engineer our tax structure and some other things, maybe some social issues. Anyway, we will come back. We will talk about some other issues. We've got the Polk County Chair, Will Rogers, not Will Robinson, as I advertised last week. Will Rogers on the show, and in fact, I've got an avid listener that sent me some questions he wants me to ask you when we come back. So we'll get to that. This is Tom Coates saying in for J. Michael McCoy, Max World Live, KTIA.
Let me let you in on a little secret. You ready? Always try to do business with people, not places, especially if you seek honest Christian business people. And when it comes to my car, I really need to trust who's working on it. Now, my family is so blessed. A few years ago, we found a family-owned automobile repair shop that operates as a Christian business also. Open, honest, reliable, trustworthy. It's AMCO on Hickman Road in front of Kmart. And it's a family-owned Christian operating business. This family treats your car as if it was their car. Everything from oil changes to transmission repair and everything in between. So the next time you feel the need to be at peace with your choice of who you can trust with your car, give AMCO on Hickman a chance to serve you. And tell them Max sent you.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
If you sit in the back pew or the front pew, it's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so call 244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
Yep, not J. Michael McCoy. Tom Coates saying in for the famous Max World Live, Webcast One Live, KTIA, a whole bunch of other titles and things that I will not be able to remember. But Will Rogers is my guest today, the chairman of the Polk County Republican Party. And, Will, we have an avid listener that sent me, when he heard you were coming on, he sent me 2 questions he wanted me to ask you.
Please, fire away.
So the first one, he says, the state of Iowa received $21.5 million as our share of the S&P settlement regarding banking, housing crisis going back to 2008. We were talking about this off the air a little bit, about the Dodd-Frank and all the other excesses the federal government's put on banking. Of this $20 million was sent to the Public Employees Pension Fund, IPERS. Why wasn't this $20 million put into the state general fund?
You know, I don't have an idea on that at all. To be quite honest, there is, and I've met her and I can look her number up, but she is the person that administers. She's the person that administers that fund for the state of Iowa, and she'd be the person to probably approach about that, because I really don't have an understanding of why that wouldn't have been put into applied to general funds.
Tom Miller have the powers and abilities to direct $20 million that way? You would think Governor Branstad could have perhaps overruled that.
Yeah,
but
I don't have a clue.
All right. Well, I'll go to...
say, what year was it that the funds were actually received?
Well, it was a suit that started back in 2008. The excesses, you remember the banking suit?
Right.
And, of course, Miller's always been quick to...
When was the money received?
Just this last year. It doesn't say here, but I remember hearing about it. It was just within the last, I think it was 2014.
You know what? Now I'm
received.
sorry. Let me back up. I'm going to speculate, okay? And
okay. Well, that's all, yeah.
Gets us in danger, in trouble.
That's all right.
I'm going to speculate that because the IPERS fund lost revenue as a part of the economic downturn, that this was money to backfill that, specifically as a part of the settlement. It might have been done because the IPERS fund did lose significant value during the economic downturn caused by the housing scandal.
Well, I think that's a good rationale. I don't think Miller used that as a rationale at the time. And his comment here further is why are the Iowa taxpayers not as protected as the government employees? And once upon a time, Will, when you were a government employee, you used to work for less than the private sector counterpart. Now I think in the state of Iowa, the last number I saw, they were working for about 140% more than their private sector counterpart, with better benefits than their private sector counterpart. And I think this demonstrates a frustration on the part of some people that they're no longer public servants. We're working for them, whether we're talking about federal government employees, state employees, what have you.
Right. You know, there's been a lot of talk on this over the last several years, and one of my favorite articles on this was maybe 5-6 years ago. The Wall Street Journal had a great article on this about how public, government jobs had, all of a sudden became much more, the compensation level had kind of flip-flopped in terms of the private sector. And, the trade-off for being a school teacher or a government employee was that you'd have a good pension, or
you had security.
You had security.
You had decent benefits.
But you were going to make less money.
And the idea was that you were going to be a bit of a servant to the people, or you were going to be a school teacher, and you weren't expecting to make as much your private sector because you wanted to devote your life to the children or to the cause that you were involved in, and that kind of sacrifice is no longer required, is it?
And I don't know many people that don't believe that teachers, classroom teachers, are compensated enough. I mean, a good one is not.
A good one is not, and that's part of the issue. Is that the teachers union protect the lowest common denominator, and we should be able to weed out the bad eggs, and we're not allowed to do that because they're always catering down to the lower common denominator.
And when you have that same conversation, that's exactly right. I think most people would agree that a merit-based system versus a seniority system would be both fair and in the best interest of creating a better system in terms of our public education.
Well, I just noticed the second question, which is kind of a follow-up to his first. State employees again receive, quote, big wage increases. This, of course, went to the arbiter who seemed to always rule for the union members. Who represents the taxpayers? A 6% pay increase over 2 years. Where does this money come from? From the taxes paid by the people who receives little, if any, pay increases. And, of course, Branstad, I know, is trying to hold the line on this. Why? And, of course, when his predecessor Culver walked out the door, he gave them everything they want without even a hint of negotiation, right?
Absolutely. Now, let me just preface a couple things. There are, and I don't know the exact number, but at the lowest point in terms of government employees and the salaries they received under Governor Culver, Governor Branstad has probably, I think, 10 to 20,000 less employees than Chet Culver ever had. And of that number, it is also, I can't remember the exact number, but Governor Branstad still has got the actual payroll still lower on his high end than Chet Culver had on his low end.
And I appreciate that. And I don't know if you recall, but I recall back in Branstad 1.0 when he was the governor, there were a period of time, maybe a year or more, where the state employees union followed him around at every step of the way, and they had protesters out because he was trying to hold the line about their pay increases even back then. So he has had a good history of this. I think this expresses some frustration not only with their constant demands for higher wages, which we've already indicated are well above their private sector counterparts already, but this ability to go to an arbitrator that may very well end up siding with the state employees. Why can't we get a better handle? I think that's his sentiment.
Tom,
here.
and and I don't know the individual that sent you that, but this is something that all of your listeners and everybody should be really concerned with. It's not the money we're paying today. It's the money that we're going to be paying the retirees 20 years
That's
from now.
what's bankrupting some of these cities and states. It's the pension fund. Well, look at Detroit. I mean, Detroit is now maybe they're a little further down the road. This is what Scott Walker went into Wisconsin to try to deal with, wasn't it?
Yes.
In fact, while we're on that subject, we've got let's see, a few more minutes here. I want to transition over to your impressions of some of the candidates, like Scott Walker and like some of the others that are coming in. I want to get your take and your feel at this point. Who's he to deal with? Who's showing potential? Who looks like he could at least be in the finals, or he or she? Give me kind of a rundown of some of your impressions of the candidates you've had a chance to interact with.
Well, overall, I've interacted with many of the people that are kind of floating that balloon or have already said they're going to run, and have been just genuinely impressed with just about everybody that's come forward. We have probably by far one of the best group or crop of candidates that are potentially going to run for president that we've probably had in the history of the Republican Party. And that's not a short exaggeration. I mean, this is a really amazing group of people. If you look at the way that, in terms of the governors and the issues that they've had to tackle as governor and as lead as executives, plus the other people that come to the race as well. And I'll give you an example. Let me just bring up Dr. Ben Carson. Dr. Carson may not necessarily be on a lot of people's short lists right now, but there's a whole group of people that he inspired through his actions as a physician, but then also in terms of his ideology and his political beliefs and what he's done to them as well in that area. And an example is the prayer breakfast, where he stood up and delicately took President Obama to the
woodshed. Exactly right.
And this is something that it really does impress me, because he didn't do it in necessarily a disrespectful fashion, but it was something that needed to be said at the time. And Dr. Carson, he's got to have a lot of people that, like I said, that have never been directly involved, that are going to be out there door knocking, lip dropping, making phone calls, and working very hard for him. We had Carly Fiorina in just a few days ago. She came in and helped out with the county party, with a house party, and then she spoke at our E3 Women's Conference. This was the Polk County Republican women got together and put this conference together. And she did a wonderful job. And she communicates a message, a conservative message, so well and so effectively that I don't know anybody that's heard her speak that doesn't agree with pretty much everything that she says. And she's been on the Sunday morning political shows. She's gone on Bill Maher, into the lion's, den, so to speak, there. And she will, and she's started to make public appearances in Iowa. And if she goes out and goes to, does the full Grassley, goes to all 99 counties, again, she's going to get a lot of people excited about her as well.
Well, it may be important for us to have a female candidate that isn't as easy to demonize as Michelle Bachmann, as Alaskan Governor Sarah Palin was, because it looks like it's either going to be Hillary or Elizabeth Warren. God help us. I mean, as bad as Hillary would be, I think Elizabeth Warren, who was a mentor and the originator of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and a mentor to Barack Obama. I can't imagine. I mean, as bad as Hillary is, she might seem a whole lot better than somebody as far left as Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah, don't doubt it for a second. The left will absolutely go after Carly Fiorina with everything they've got.
Not as easy. I'm speculating it won't be as easy a target as some of those other women.
Maybe not as easy of a target, but I will tell you that they are going to, if they see her gaining any momentum, and especially if she doesn't win the nomination, but she might end up as a second on the ticket and vice president, they will come after her with everything she got. If the Republicans win the White House and she comes in as a department, a cabinet secretary, again, they'll go after her as well. They don't want a conservative woman. They don't like Joni Ernst.
That's exactly right. They and the same thing holds for a black conservative male. I mean, it is unacceptable to the liberals and their media allies to have a conservative black man. He's automatically labeled as an Uncle Tom. To have a conservative, intelligent, outspoken woman, that's unacceptable. The real war on women is coming from the people that are given a pass. The liberals themselves, or the Muslims that put the women in servitude, and they give them a pass. The conservatives in this country are the ones that supposedly have a war on women, and it's ironic because it's just the opposite.
One of the little great news stories that I heard, Hillary Clinton and out there talking about the war on women and the equal pay for equal work, and exactly Hillary Clinton's office in her department, State Department, women receive, was it 65 cents on the dollar?
Yeah, it was even worse than the Obama administration, who loves to talk about the war on women as well, but pays their women less. But Hillary was even worse. In the state, as Secretary of State, and they'll get up and they'll applaud, like the Academy Awards, where that woman Arquette got up and ranted on about Hollywood not paying the women equally. Well, we're coming up to our next break, and we've got a lot more discussion. Now, this is an active hour. It's going quickly, and we're going to come back. This is Tom Coates sitting in for J. Michael McCoy at Webcast One Live, KTIA, Max World Live.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Hobbs.
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed, fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money-back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fixing the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you could just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever. That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing, we have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
If you're not happy, we're gonna make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money-back guarantee on what we do, what type of work do you think we do?
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.
If you sit in the back pew or the front pew, it's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so call 244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
Tom Coates sitting in for J. Michael McCoy. My guest today is Will Rogers, and Will and I were just talking before the mics came back on. You were talking about doing the thing for some of the other candidates. The Donald Trump is wanting to come in and do a house party. Run down these candidates that you've had a chance to interact with. You mentioned Karsten. You mentioned Fiorina. Talk about some of the others.
I'll give you some examples of some other folks I talked to. Lindsey Graham, who's a senator from South Carolina, and I had a chance to visit with him while he was in for the Ag Summit a couple weekends ago. And afterwards, got to sit down with him for about an hour. And I was just generally impressed. I mean, there's some issues that he's certainly probably not going to be in sync with in terms of, maybe some of the Republican activists here in Polk County are in the state of Iowa. Right. However, overall, I think Lindsey Graham really has a great message to talk about on a lot of the issues. And let me give you this. One of the things that he talked about at the Ag Summit, but is really going to make a front and center issue, is that we've got to deal, obviously, with our foreign threats with ISIS and radical Islamists all around the world. But at the other time of it is our greatest threat is this unfunded liability in Medicare and Social Security. And he's going to make that a part of his, a central part of his message. And when he talks about that, he's going to get a lot of people to take interest. And again, if he comes in to Iowa, does the things that he will need to do in order to get himself in front of people, he's going to actually be surprisingly competitive, because he's he knows how to connect well with people.
He's a communicator.
He's a communicator.
I've been around him a little bit. I understand that. And a lot of people think that Iowa's choosing the candidate. I believe that we're eliminating candidates, that we're winnowing the field more than we're actually choosing the candidate. We're doing the rest of the party and the rest of the country a favor, because instead of having to sort through a dozen, maybe they'll only have to sort through 4 or 5 serious candidates by the time we get done with them here out of Iowa. In your mind, who likely turns out to be maybe in the last 4, 5, 6 candidates that maybe the rest of the country can take a serious look at?
Well, I'm going to be quite honest with you. I've had the opportunity to meet with Governor Bush, Jeb Bush, and was very impressed. He certainly will be formidable this election cycle, and if I had to take any money and put it on anybody at this point, it would be Jeb Bush. Okay. Not because necessarily that he's better than anybody else on any specific issue. I think overall he has a broader appeal. I think that the more that people have a chance to, again, hear him, get in the same room, find out more about what he has to say and what he thinks and what he believes, I think they're going to realize that he's not his father, that he isn't his brother, that he is his own person, and that he could be a very effective president.
Well, apparently he was a popular and effective governor from Florida for some years. Even many of the moderates and Democrats thought he did a very credible job. Okay, besides Jeb Bush, which is obviously one with money and name, at least can raise money, who else is on your short list?
Well, I think Scott Walker, again, just because of the fact that as a state executive, he's going to have a great record to tout when he goes to Washington, or if he goes out on the campaign trail. He's going to connect well with people. He's seen as somebody that is likable. He's not really brash. He's not somebody that is a bigger than life type of persona. Yet at the same time, he's kind of has that Midwestern nice.
Well, and he's shown he won't back down either, which is something that I think a lot of the Republicans are very frustrated with Washington right now. They sent him in there to stop the Obama agenda, and it looks like the next version of the Keystone Cops. They're falling all over themselves, not getting Obama's way on whatever he wants to do. So I think somebody that has stood up, has opposed and defeated, in this case primarily the public labor unions in the state of Wisconsin, is going to be very appealing to a lot of potential and not just Republican voters. I think there's a lot of people that feel that the government overreach is extended too far. They resent, as my listeners' questions indicate, the high-paid government unions running things, because the private unions have declined in numbers and power for many years. You know that well. But the one that hasn't is the public employees union. FDR and even some of the labor unions of the day said it's not practical to unionize government workers. You've got the entity that's going to be doing the bargaining on the same side of the table as the labor unions, and yet some of the early formers of unions who said you can't do this would be astounded at how much the public unions now have money, power, and influence over our very government.
Yep. And again, Scott Walker can put a big check mark on the list of stood up to big left organization, and he's going to have, I guess, a good message there. Obviously, people already know about it because it was highly publicized, and so it's not like something that he's going to have to talk about a whole lot.
Right.
But he's, those two right there. I think you got certainly Governor Christie should be placed on that list.
You think so?
Yes, absolutely.
I see his stock falling.
Right. Let me put it this way. There's a lot of time between now and the Iowa caucuses, and there's a lot of time between now and next June. And what I mean by that is let's go back and look at history. And I'm saying these people were successful in getting elected president, but John Kerry was down and out. He wasn't even going to sniff the White House, in 2004.
Yeah, the great American gigolo, I know.
Right, and all of a sudden, he came back and was successful. John McCain, in the summer of 2007, people were saying, why doesn't he drop out? He should close his office. There's no way he's going to win the nomination. And again, went on to win the nomination.
Well, the conservatives knocked each other off on that one. He never had the majority of votes, but he was the one that stood out because the conservatives were knocking each other off on that election.
There's reasons why people are successful. There's certainly that. But my point is that to say someone's out of it because of whatever.
I'm not saying he's out. I would not. That's why I appreciate your opinion. I would not put New Jersey Governor Chris Christie on that short list. Who else do you see on there?
Well, I know that Rand Paul, a lot of people want to talk, relate him to his father. And yes, there may be some of the same people that supported Ron Paul, that support Rand Paul, but I certainly think we got to look beyond Ron Paul when we talk about Rand Paul, okay? Let me give you one example. Last summer at the Republican GOP convention, Senator Paul came in and spoke, and he spoke right before lunch. And after that, I migrated my way over to Buzzard Billy's for lunch real quick, and I sat at a table full of people that I've known for some cases almost 20 years now. And these are some people that are about the same age as myself, 5 years younger or older, either way. Of that group of people, they were there just raving about what a great speech that Rand Paul gave, and what a great message it was, and that they really were looking to him as a possible person that they would support in the presidential process. At the same time, one of them stood there and said, it's kind of awkward. Here I am standing on my feet applauding what Rand Paul just said, and I look over at the guy standing next to me who's wearing a 9/11 truther button and is a member of the Tinfoiled Hat Society.
Right.
And they kind of get an uneasy feeling. And the question is, how much will that, connect with the people that are going to end up gravitating towards Rand Paul, maybe thinking he's a little more mainstream when in fact he might be, there'll be a question mark there. It's like, is he everything that we want? And he may not be, and we may never find that candidate, but he certainly will be on that short list.
Okay, all right. Real quick, anybody else you want to throw on there?
There's not a lot of people out there right now that I would say are disqualified, but it's going to be tougher, I think, for this time around for senators, just because of the job that President Obama has done the last 6 to 8 years, and the fact that Hillary Clinton was, yes, Secretary of State, but she was a senator.
Exactly.
It's going to hurt.
Well, I think you're right. And I personally am predisposed to want the skill set of an administrator and a governor over one the senator. So I'm betraying some of my own personal prejudice. Tom Coates saying in for J. Michael McCoy, KTIA, Webcast One Live, Max World Live, on and on. Thank you. We'll be back.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can give these grandkids back, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We can help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hey, psst. Let me let you in on a little secret. You ready? Always try to do business with people, not places. Especially if you seek honest Christian business people. And when it comes to my car, I really need to trust who's working on it. Now, my family is so blessed. A few years ago, we found a family-owned automobile repair shop that operates as a Christian business also. Open, honest, reliable, trustworthy. It's AMCO on Hickman Road in front of Kmart, and it's a family-owned Christian operating business. This family treats your car as if it was their car. Everything from oil changes to transmission repair and everything in between. So the next time you feel the need to be at peace with your choice of who you can trust with your car, give AMCO on Hickman a chance to serve you. And tell them Max sent you.
If you sit in the back pew or the front pew, it's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so call 244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
Ladies and gentlemen, one last time, not J. Michael McCoy in today. Tom Coates doing the best he can with our good guest, our good friend, Will Rogers. Will and I sat and played some dominoes just a little over a week ago, didn't we, Will? And I think I gave you another domino lesson. You've read my book now, though, so I'm afraid that you're going to catch up with me now.
It's the same length as your Tom Coates Everything I Know About Life, which is...
It's a short read.
It's
okay.
a short read.
Will, you had a follow-up on what we were talking about before we went to break.
Well, Tom mentioned before we went to break about the importance of looking to somebody for executive experience versus somebody that may have been experienced from the Senate, which is they don't get a lot done. You have to be more effective when you're an executive of a state, and you have to be much more responsive to people. Let me say this. This is what I'm looking for in terms of our presidential nominee, and I haven't solidified even remotely on anybody
Sure.
yet. And I'm keeping almost every person in play at this point. But what I'm looking for is a person that's a leader. Mm-hmm. And that leader isn't a manager. That person is somebody that's going to inspire me, whether it's their story or their message. But if you remember, and I'm just going to bring this up, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., what was the title of his speech that he gave in Washington, D.C.?
I Have a Dream?
Yeah, it wasn't I Have a Plan.
Mm-hmm.
It's the I Have a Dream speech. And it's what your vision of what you want the country to be. And I think that that's what's going to inspire me the most when I hear that from the right person. And maybe I'm not going to see, I've only, except with the exception of one person, have I ever caucused for the winner of the Iowa caucuses, and they didn't win the presidential nomination. That being said, I will always back the candidate that I really believe has the best message for our country.
Well, I think that's interesting observation, Will, and I think that's good. I mean, and we'd all look back to one that kind of epitomized almost everything we'd like to see: a communicator, an administrator, a leader. Ronald Reagan, and we keep looking for Reagan, and we're not finding him. And I think we need to be thinking that we need to get as close to that kind of combination as we can. But we're not going to find Ronald Reagan too out here. Let me go to a couple of issues that are on the national front in our closing minutes here. There's been a lot made about Hillary Clinton's email scandals. And it comes out, Ed Klein wrote a couple of books on the Clintons, and he's acknowledged to be, if not the expert, one of the top experts on Bill and Hillary Clinton going back for many, many years. He's come out recently, Will, and speculated with his sources that it is not the Republicans that have outed and then savaged Hillary, but rather it's the Democrats led by the Obama administration and Valerie Jarrett. Now, I know in his earlier book he talked about the evenings where Michelle Maybell and Valerie Jarrett would sit around over a glass of wine and make fun of what they called the Hildebeest when Hillary was the Secretary of State. And they told stories about her, and they didn't like her, and the Clintons and the Obamas have a distaste going back over the years. It goes back to the 2008 election. Bill made some comments about Obama down the South that weren't well taken to. He was promised by Obama, Will, you know, this is not just for you but for the audience, that when he thought he was in a neck-and-neck race with Romney, he begged Bill to come out and get on the stump for him. And his promise was that he was going to back Hillary in 2016 when she ran. As soon as he won, he wanted to renege on that promise that he made, and Bill and Hillary demanded a dinner where he was going to hold him accountable. And the accounts of that dinner, what Klein does, he gets to some of the insiders of Bill and Hillary. They like to talk, and then the insiders like to talk to show that they're on the inside, and Klein picks up on these sources. And the details of that dinner and their relationship is a shambles. And so why he may resent Hillary and not want her to be president is a matter of some speculation, but I don't think it's even arguable that Obama and his people are at the bottom of not only outing Hillary on her emails, but the money that she's taken, foreign money coming into her private foundation, and now it comes out there's like 6 different investigations going on Hillary, instituted by Obama, Valerie Jarrett, her people. What do you think about this whole mess?
Well, it's something that gives us something to obviously talk about. My question is it going to give the people on the left something to take pause about? The fact of the is that there's this big left freight train coming down the tracks, and it's got Hillary at the controls. And the Democrat machine is not going to stop that. And the question is will the left meet the media, will the other small groups within the left, are they willing to jump off the train, get off at some point before it's too late and she becomes their party nominee and wins the nomination? I don't think at this point it's going to affect her from winning the Democrat Party nomination. The question is are we going to get a candidate that can defeat her in the general election? And
if she does get the nomination, I think that's still open to a lot of debate at this point. Who knows what may yet come out? We're just seeing maybe the tip of the iceberg. But if she is a nominee, is she going to be so weakened that she is an easy beat then?
That's great speculation. Again, who's paying attention to it? That's my question. If it's just the people that watch Fox News that are talking about it, or the folks that tune in to
initially broke on the New York Post. I mean, it wasn't just us conservatives that have been talking about this.
And I'd love to see how that's moved the needle. If the people in New York think any less about her being president.
Yeah.
And that's my question. And I haven't seen enough information that makes me conclude that this is going to be an issue that disrupts her eventual coronation by the Democrats.
All right, last issue real quickly I want to get into. Today is the day for the Israeli elections. Will, you're Jewish, your thoughts on there's been involvement by the Obama administration again, resources used to shift this election. They hate Netanyahu. They don't like the conservatives over there. They would like get a liberal politician like his opponent. Your thoughts?
I just want to tell you, Tom, it's something that one of the news commentators brought something up. This was a couple weeks ago on one of the Sunday morning shows. He said, under this president, name one other country, besides Iran and North Korea that we have better relationships today than we did before he was president. Name one country that we have a better relationship today with other than Iran and North Korea under President Obama than we did previously.
I agree.
And
will Netanyahu survive?
I hope he does.
Okay, well, I do too. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a real pleasure coming to you and bringing you our guest today, Will Rogers, the chair of the Polk County GOP. I believe next week Mac will be back in the big chair again, and I don't know who the guest is going to be, but I'm sure it'll be someone of interest as we've been having the last few weeks. This is Tom Coates setting in for vacationing J. Michael McCoy, KTIA Max World Live.